Speaking of Courage podcast, back in studio. What's up, guys? What's up, Chase?
What's going on?
How you doing, man?
Good, man. Just tired and hot again.
Yeah, it's a hot one.
Yeah, it's going to stay this way for a bit, I think.
No AC going while we record.
We like to
It's a
suffer.
sauna.
We do it on purpose.
Yeah,
we
it's on
could.
purpose.
Yeah, I make sure I have my long sleeve shirts on every time too.
Yeah, why do you do that?
It's just my style, man.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You just try to rough it out?
Yeah. I got a constant misery.
Yeah. When we're talking about these stories you're suffering along?
Yeah, that's my logic.
All right, man. Where are we headed today?
All right, you tell me. I'm going to keep making you guess.
2?
Yeah.
World War II?
All right, World War II. Where are we at?
Not in the Pacific.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so we're in the
Close
European
enough.
theater. Yeah, we're going to be going World War II again, which seems to be a favorite with a lot of people.
Yeah.
So I like a lot of the stories there, too.
That is definitely a favorite that people enjoy.
Yeah, definitely. It's sadly the Pacific's a little bit forgotten in World War II. Like I said, that's kind of the one I like too. But usually when you think of World War II, you're thinking about fighting the German army and everything.
Yeah.
So it's a good one to stick with.
Who's the hero of the day?
So today we're doing a gentleman by the name of Eli Whiteley, and I believe that's how it's pronounced. But there's not a whole ton of info out there, so it could be Whitley. But
I feel like I've heard that name.
Whiteley?
Yeah.
Maybe you know someone with it, but it's unfamiliar.
That
to me.
specific name, Eli. We didn't go to any graves?
No.
No? Huh. Is it a famous story?
No, not so much.
No, okay.
I don't think so. Yeah, not to me. It's not. I mean, maybe it is in some circles, but there's very little information out there. So I'm not sure who you're thinking of. It'll probably pop into my head.
Yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
Someone else you were thinking.
Okay,
of.
when was he
Another
born?
Eli again. All right, so Eli was born in Texas in 1913. So we got another Texan going on, which
Okay.
seems to be a common trend here as well. He was born in Williamson County, Texas, and grew up near Georgetown, Texas.
Okay. A lot of Texas residents, huh?
Yeah. Even when I was in the Army, it seems like everyone's either from California or Texas.
Is that who has the most Medal of Honor recipients? Do they know?
I don't know.
I feel like it's Texas.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was Texas, but
Yeah.
I'd have to look it up to actually see.
Yeah, a lot of military come out of Texas,
Yeah,
man.
it's a big population
Yeah.
too, though. You know,
One of the
so,
biggest
that's going to
states.
be part of it, and then it has a certain culture to it, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of bases there. When I was stationed on Fort Hood, I mean that's in Texas, so half the guys there are from Texas.
Oh, okay.
You know. But yeah, he's going to be from Georgetown, Texas. And he comes into being into a farming family. He's going to be the second son. Both his parents are going to be farmers, and he's going to grow up on the farm and that farm lifestyle.
Another
right?
farm boy.
Another farm boy. He's going to be taking care of the livestock, the goats and the turkeys and the crops. He's going to be involved in FFA, Futures Farmers of America.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so like we talk about a lot of these similar upbringings with these guys. So early on, learning responsibility. You know, last week we talked about Donlin taking care of his chickens.
Yeah.
The last episode.
You got to get up early.
Yeah, in this one, he's going to be taking care of the goats and turkeys, and in FFA, they're responsible for a certain animal. So those kinds of things kind of breed responsible in a sense.
Yeah.
You know, probally a deer hunting man,
Yeah,
to a degree.
exactly.
But it's hard to say for sure. While he's in high school, though, he's going to be inside joke. Sorry, he's going to be playing football and running track. So he's a little bit of an athlete. But again, that's part of Texas too. If you're from Texas, you're either playing football or you're not.
Yeah,
When
definitely up before dawn.
Yeah, exactly. When I was stationed in Texas, again, you'd be driving around and you see these big stadiums, and you're like, oh, what NFL team is that? And it's a high school football team. So it's part
I went
of the
through
culture
there before, right when I was in high school. Same thing, man.
Yeah.
High school football is like
It's
college
huge.
football out there.
It's big out there, and I don't know how big it would have been during this time frame.
Yeah.
He was born in 1913, so in the early 20s and everything. But I imagine it was still pretty big over there. He also participated in the debate club and public speaking, which is another aspect of this. We've had
Intelligent
a few guys.
guy.
Yeah, you're going to be intelligent. You're going to be able to have that good command presence, right?
Yep.
Because it's almost easy sometimes to be on a football field and to do your job and to do it well, but to be able to stand in front of a crowd and
By
be
yourself.
comfortable with your words by yourself, that's kind of add to leadership skills.
Yeah,
I
for
think.
sure.
A lot of people have fear of public speaking, even jocks
Yep.
and everything. So to be able to do that says something.
Yeah, on a
about
football
that as
team, you
well.
can kind of blend in with your
Yeah.
teammates.
In any team sport, you can
Debate,
hide.
you're not only on stage, you're having to have a point of view
Exactly.
and argue it. you
Yeah,
know?
and everyone's nitpicking you and all the
Yeah.
other intellectuals and stuff. So to be able to do football track and debate and
Yeah.
public speaking is pretty impressive.
Yeah, for sure. Especially a farm boy.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. Yeah. But he's going to graduate from Georgetown High School in 1932, and then he's going to apply to Texas A&M, which is, again, we've had a few, the Aggies. This is that military-type school. A lot of Aggie Medal of Honor recipients. A lot of guys go on. Even though they're not a service school, they have an ROTC program. But Whiteley actually didn't have good enough grades to get in. So they told him, you need to take some more coursework and you need to get better grades before you can reapply, basically. So during that time, it's the Great Depression, and there's not a lot of jobs. So Whiteley is a hardworking individual. He's been raised that way, so he just starts taking on any job he can get. He's working on ranches. He's working at gas stations. He's working as a waiter. He's building rock fences. He's just going around trying to get work. And then he gets a job with the Agricultural Adjustment Administration, which is a new federal agency. Basically just, working as hard as he can, doing everything he can to kind of improve his lot. And after 6 years, he applies again for Texas A&M, which was called...
After 6 years off?
After 6 years, so now he's 24 years old.
Wow.
Right? Which kind of shows what kind of person he is.
And then he's keeping to his goals, yeah.
Exactly. Nothing's gonna keep him down, even if it takes this amount of time. And after 6 years, you figure you're already deep into working, you might as well just get on with it.
I was going to say, from 18 to 24, that's a lifetime, dude.
Right.
That's not 6 years in your 40s or 30s,
But he's going to still go back and he's going to start school, and then he's going to major in agriculture, which is, fitting to this type of farming lifestyle. He's such a hard worker, though, that he ends up taking in as many classes as he can. So he joins ROTC, and then he's taking extra summer programs, and he's going through ROTC essentially to become an officer. He takes so many classes, and he's such a hard worker that he actually graduates in 3 years instead of 4.
Damn.
So even though he's an older guy. But the problem with that is ROTC is a 4-year commitment. So because he graduated early, he gets out and he doesn't get commissioned as an officer, basically.
He has to wait another year?
Well, he just doesn't get commissioned.
Oh, man.
Because you didn't fulfill your obligation. You can't just hang out.
Oh, I see. So it's like a sign-up contract.
Exactly. He didn't fulfill his contract. He's out. But he looked on his time at Texas A&M as, a very valuable time in life. He said it gave poor farm boys an opportunity to get a degree, and he was very grateful for that opportunity. After he left Texas A&M, it's 1941 now, so we know what's coming, right?
Yep.
He ends up moving to Raleigh, North Carolina, and he starts to get his master's degree at North Carolina. So he's a very intelligent guy.
Yeah, he's getting after it.
Especially a time when, now everyone's kind of expected to go to college if you're not like us. Anyways.
Wasn't like that then.
Definitely not like that in the late 1930s, early 1940s. It was going to be a certain type of people that went to school.
And difficult to put yourself through.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that certain type of people generally is not going to be a farm kid from Texas. And by now he's older, like we said.
Yeah.
He's 24 when he got accepted, so now he's almost 27 years old. But he goes and he starts working on his master's degree, and then Pearl Harbor's attacked. So like all Americans, like the rest of the world, we're thrust into this war. So no longer can he think about himself and his future. He's thinking about the country. So he wants to get in the fight like all these guys
were
do.
a lot of people thinking along those lines, like, yeah, I'm in college, I want to finish my master's, but shit, if we don't handle this, there's not going to be a future.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Everybody, there were definitely going to be people that are going to finish their schooling and continue with their plans, especially because the way the draft was set up then. But there was all kinds of people that just dropped everything. The lines, after Pearl Harbor, the lines were just out the door with guys, and you're going to have 17 and 18-year-old kids, people lying about their age. You're also going to have business-type people that
But
are
was
just
this a
quitting
type
careers.
of situation where they were legitimately worried about being overthrown?
Yeah, absolutely.
United States wide.
We
like life as we know it.
Well, you remember on 9/11 when we were kind of those early days wondering if there was going to be another attack?
Yeah,
next? It was like that, but much more so, right? Because we were bracing for an invasion of the West Coast by the Japanese.
Yeah, they didn't hit buildings. They hit military.
Right. They hit military installations. They attacked Pearl Harbor, which is our territory. It was the territory. It's
much different.
Time. They also invaded Alaska. And like we've talked about on the show before, they started to shell the West Coast a little bit in very minor places. They had, weapons that were like hot air balloon styles that killed a woman in Oregon who was, so we're bracing for this attack. There's sightings all over. There's sightings on the East Coast of German submarines,
Yeah.
So we didn't know what was coming. So everybody was driven to this goal. We have to stop this enemy because our democracy is at stake.
Okay.
Our peace is at stake.
That makes more sense why they were so motivated.
Right. It wasn't just
because it's like if I stay here,
it wasn't an abstract thought. It was something that had to be done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Whiteley's one of those people. So he's going to go to the draft board, and instead of waiting for his number to be called, he goes and he requests, hey, pull me on the next draft, basically. Move my number up. So they do. So he ends up getting drafted April 12th of 1942, which is very early in the war, considering. Being from Texas, he's sent to Camp Walters for basic training, which is where Audie Murphy went, and it's probably right around the same time.
That's crazy.
So, yeah, there's potentially, they could have crossed paths somewhere there, and then again later in Europe. After basic training, though, you got to consider he's got 3 years of ROTC already, and he's quite a bit older than these other guys because he's born in 1913 and it's 1942. So he excels and he does really well. So they sent him to a 3-week NCO course, which is non-commissioned officers like corporals and sergeants or non-commissioned
Because of his age and education?
and his experience and that leadership that he's going to be taking on right away. You know, because you have a college-educated guy. You have a guy with a bachelor's degree. He's a bit older. Again, he's a public speaker. He's done all these things, and he's got 3 years of military
And you can almost
training.
imagine how he carries himself, too.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Very driven.
And how those younger guys, when you're all getting yelled at and scared and trying to figure out what's going on, and he's already knows what to do because he's been through it, you're going to flock to him. And then when he is, eloquent and articulate, you're going to be following him even more. So they recognize that. The Army sends him to NCO school, and then they end up sending him to Officers Candidate School at Fort Benning.
Okay.
So after that, he's commissioned a second lieutenant. So he kind of went back the roundabout way of getting his commission.
Okay.
So rather than Texas A&M, he ends up a second lieutenant. After he's made an officer, though, he's actually sent back to Camp Walters, and he's made a training officer. Okay, so even though he wanted to go fight the enemy and he wanted to serve his country, he wanted to fight back against the Japanese and or the Germans who declared war on us, he's actually sent back as a training officer.
So they must have seen something in him.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, hey, and again, the education goes a long way. This is going to be an army with very few relatively college graduates.
Yeah.
So when you have someone like that, you can put him in an administrative position.
Yeah, yeah.
So
and a lot of farm boys, guys from the
Exactly.
Great Depression,
And
growing
they're-
up on
and
dirt
they're-
floor.
Almost cannon fodder in a sense. Just send them over. But when you have someone who has these requisite skills, you're going to put them in a place to use them.
Yeah.
So he's a training officer until November of 1944. He's going to spend the bulk of the war actually stateside.
Okay.
Which again, this is a lot of things you don't think about. Most troops didn't see combat even then. They're going to be all over.
So he's training all the youngsters that are
Yeah.
about to go through.
Exactly. And he's
Okay.
going to be overseeing that training. My grandpa Ash, you remember him?
Yeah.
He joined right after Pearl Harbor as well, but he had an eye condition, so he spent most of the war at Fort Knox in the training cadre.
Oh, nice.
And then he finally worked his way overseas right at the end. So
Yeah.
kind of similar. Whiteley's going to get his orders to Europe in November of 1944. So he's going to ship over to Europe, and they're going to land in England. So it's going to be that troop ship experience that everybody has,
Yep.
Those bunks stacked all the way high on the ship. You're going to be with guys from all over the country. Guys are going to be throwing up. Most of these guys, it's going to be their first time on a ship.
You can only imagine.
And this isn't a cruise ship.
This isn't a cruise ship for comfort.
This is everyone's stacked, and if one guy throws up, you're smelling the vomit because it's not going to be cleaned up very well.
Imagine just the sicknesses, dude, the colds, the flus.
Yeah,
they would
just
just
bringing
sweep
everybody
through.
in there together, and the food's not great, and then not to mention the fact that you can get killed because there's German U-boats that are out there trying to kill you.
Yep.
So they're taking these zigzag courses, and everybody's scared. Everybody's trying to look over the deck, and you're probably seeing things, and you're hearing all these rumors because that's what the military is.
And just think open ocean, man. If you're a farm boy raised in the Midwest or something, like looking out there and just seeing a freaking, as far as you could see water,
Right,
it's got to just
exactly.
be a surreal experience.
And you know what's coming, too. Because
Yeah.
when you land, it's not like, okay, the trip's over or we started
No, you're
vacation.
late enough
It's-
in the war where you've heard stories.
Exactly. So in the beginning of the war, you might have guys thinking, oh, we're going to go over there and kick their ass in a week.
Yeah.
But now it's 1944. It's the end of 1944.
These guys probably all know people that have died.
There's people in their hometowns that, they're with the gold stars in their window, brothers and sons not coming home. They might have had family members. They're seeing the news reports.
Yep.
Yeah, just guys getting chewed up. They're watching
And the propaganda
newsreels.
machine was going hard, too.
Exactly.
So it made the enemy seem a lot worse, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And as a training officer, he's probably learning some of these lessons too, and he's seeing all that kind of stuff. So that's what they're getting sent into.
Yeah.
And when he arrives in Europe, when he gets there, he ends up in the 3rd Infantry Division, L Company, the 15th Infantry Regiment. And 3rd Infantry Division, 15th Infantry Regiment was Audie Murphy's unit again.
Nice.
So again, might have crossed paths. He's made a rifle platoon leader. And there's this particular unit, the 15th, they actually had 16 guys who received the Medal of Honor during the war, which is huge.
Damn.
And one of them is Audie Murphy because he's going to be in
Just from that company?
just from that unit, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a regiment,
Yeah.
so it's 4 or 5 companies or
Yeah.
so. But it's very hard fought. That speaks to the volume of combat they
Yeah,
see.
definitely.
And if you guys haven't seen our Audie Murphy episodes, check those
Yeah.
out. But the 3rd Infantry Division, they were fighting from North Africa. They fought through Sicily. They fought up the Italian boot. They fought in southern France. They were in constant combat, hundreds
Was
of
that the
days.
Anzio?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're going to go in, they're going to pull out, they're going to move back. It's several amphibious invasions, just hard fought. That Italian campaign, it's just going to be intense. And he's going to be catching up to the unit by the time they're already through Italy. They're already through most of that major combat, and now they're going to be in France, in the Vosges Mountains, I believe it's pronounced.
Yeah.
So a lot of these guys he's with have been fighting for years. He's a lieutenant, but some of these guys that are under him, even privates and corporals, they're going to be very bloodied men. They're going to be
Grizzled.
hard fought, and they're going to know things. And then there's going to be other guys that are brand new replacements that came over on the boat with him.
That's got to be such a trip to see that dynamic.
Right. Think about if you started a new job and they're like, oh, hey, by the way, you're in charge of everybody. Go in there. You know, it's a computer job at an office or something. You know, how hard that would be. Now imagine this. And again, you might have somebody, some corporal or something that's been in combat for 3 years that already has a Purple Heart.
Just annoyed by the new people.
And then you're that
Think about
new
just
guy
jiu-jitsu
and you're in
class,
charge.
dude.
Right.
You know, you're a fresh white belt, but you've been in for a couple months, and then you see a new white belt come in, you're like, you have no idea what you're getting into.
Yeah, bro. Yeah. Now imagine if you're a blue belt or a brown belt, and a white belt comes in and says, "I'm leading the class." All of a sudden, right? Hey, I'm the professor for today. You know, I'm a white belt. Everybody, you know, give me the respect that the government gave me, as opposed to what you earned. So that's one of those difficult points for lieutenants and officers.
Yeah.
So at this point in the war, in a sense, the war is winding down, but that doesn't mean the war is easy, right? So the Germans are fighting even harder now because we're closing in on their homeland. So before, the Germans were fighting for territory they occupied, places they conquered, you know, their ideal, their hopes of victory. Now they're fighting for their lives. Some of these guys are going to be in areas where their family's from. So you can put it in reverse.
And they know the terrain.
Exactly.
That's one of the biggest things that's always overlooked, too.
And they're friggin' desperate.
You're going into their backyard.
Yep.
You're getting close to their families, where their kids are.
Anybody there, any place they fall back through, that means they've been there. So they have it mapped out. They have that artillery. They have all that stuff. So he's joining the unit in this final push, and he's going to get indoctrinated into combat very quickly. Now remember as well, this is November, December 1944. This is going to be freezing cold too. So not only are you dealing with the problems of command and the problems of the enemy, you're also freezing. You're going to have trench foot. You're going to be marching. Your boots aren't going to fit right. All that hypothermia, everything. You know, your feet are constantly numb. Your fingers are numb. You're having to flex your fingers as you go. In December 23rd, 1944, Whiteley and his unit are going to attack the area called Benvir, I believe it's pronounced.
Before we get there real quick, that's 3 years after Pearl Harbor.
Right.
So you go back 3 years and just see what's transpired in the last 3 years. Isn't that crazy to just think about?
That short period of time, how much is going on.
Just how much the world changed.
Yeah, if you watch those battle maps of the shifting and ebbing and the countries, you know.
I know 3 years ago he's going for his master's.
Right.
Now he's up in the mountains of some foreign country.
Mm-hmm. And as stupid as this sounds, think of all the training and intelligence and hard work he's put into making himself an educated person, and he can just die somewhere with a rifle bullet on the side of the road. Think of how many soldiers, you know, met their deaths in combat that could have been Albert Einstein.
That 3 years ago,
or something like
they
that,
were just,
you know.
A guy going to school or a football scholared athlete.
All that potential we'll never know. You know, or they could have been, you know, just some poor white trash kid or a criminal for the other hand. But it's just...
You know for sure some special people died there.
Exactly.
You just don't know how
some
special.
Some of the most potentially brilliant people in the world could have just been thrown into that gristmill of combat and just been
especially with the Pearl Harbor one, because it touched everybody. You know what I mean? From the scholars to the grunts, everybody was motivated. So you know you got all ends of the spectrum. It wasn't just a poor fought. You know?
Yeah, it wasn't one segment of society, it was everybody. So all these guys from all segments of society are with Whiteley in this unit. And on, again, December 23rd, 1944, they're going to engage in this bitter fight with the Germans. In L Company, which is the company he's in, 125 men started this battle, and at the end of the battle, only 56 of them were able to stand and be combat efficient.
Wow.
So over half of the unit was killed or wounded in this intense battle. And that's going to be December 23rd. So... now you're moving forward again. Imagine over half your guys are killed or wounded, and you have to keep pressing that fight. You have to keep going forward.
Are those just machine gun positions? Or?
That's going to be everything.
Yeah.
They're trying to attack a fortified position, which is always bad, right? And the Germans are getting
They're dug in.
Yeah, because the Germans, they have propaganda too, and they believe we're going to do terrible things to them if they surrender potentially. So these guys are not giving up. You know, there's a lot of true believers left, and the ones that aren't true believers are being forced to fight as well.
Yeah.
So on December 27th, 1944, he's leading his platoon, and they're going to attack this village called Sigolsheim.
In Sigolsheim.
Yeah, Sigolsheim, it's basically going to be a fortified town, right?
Okay.
So not only are these towns naturally fortified because you have buildings and you have streets and you have walls and you have all the things you're going to have there, but the Germans have actually fortified it as well. So they're going to have their fighting positions and sandbags and machine guns.
They can be up high on top of buildings.
Exactly. And again, think of if you were going to defend any downtown city, right? If you're up in a high building, you can see the movement throughout the town. You can see where the enemy's coming. You can see any advances, and you can fortify those places.
Right.
You can also put, landmines, you can use rockets, you can use RPGs. I'm sorry, not RPGs. Panzerfaust is what they were using at the time, which was kind of the equivalent of a bazooka, but it was what the Germans were using.
And they would just shoot down into the streets at you, huh?
So yeah, they could step out into an alleyway as you're advancing because, like we said, a street is a natural causeway, right? So that's going to create a fatal funnel. You have to move through the street essentially because you can't get through these buildings as an infantryman. So you're forced.
Are you going building by building?
Potentially. So you're going to either fight room to room, which you almost have to because you can't leave the enemy behind you. Because if you run down a street and you bypass it and they pop out the window, they're going to shoot you from behind, and they have the high ground.
They got you surrounded,
and they're fortified, right? So you're going to have to kick in every door. You're going to have to.
That's a scary way to fight.
Exactly. So a good way, a lot of ways they would do it is you kick the door and throw in a grenade and hope there's no civilians in there, and then you flush through. But again, just like the streets, a door is what we call a fatal funnel, because if you're the enemy and you're hiding inside a house, all you got to do is wait and see that door open, and someone's going to come through in a second, right? So you just wait and you fire into the door. Us on the offensive, when you're pushing through, you don't know what's on the other side of the door. So you don't know if you're going to get met with gunfire as soon as you come in, or as soon as you go in, you're going to trip a wire, or you're going to go a little further and they're going to fire you from the basement, or you're going to place explosives. You don't know what it's going to be.
Yeah.
And again, these Panzerfaust they're made to take out tanks, but they're going to be using them against the infantry.
Damn.
And at the end of the battle, they found over 200 Panzerfaust tubes that the Germans had fired in the course of defending this little town.
And this town is where they lost.
No, that was
before.
previously. They already lost
shit.
that. Now we're attacking the town
Again.
with these limited numbers,
Damn.
right? So that was a previous offensive about within a week of it. But this is just going to be brutal and terrifying. It's hard to move. We can't just move our tanks through the streets because they're going to be getting caught up in these buildings. And if a tank gets stuck and they get hit with the Panzerfaust, now we have a tank blocking the road. So the defenders are going to have a huge, huge, huge advantage on them. So it's just going to be the worst thing you're going to want to do. And again, don't forget, these Germans are trapped. They're desperate, and they're amazing fighters. So we have them trapped. They have no choice but to fight, so they're going to fight to the death, to pretty much, right? And as the battle went on, they started figuring out pretty quick, these Germans are not surrendering. They're refusing to surrender. They're not giving up. The only way we're stopping them is by killing them or seriously wounding them to where they can't defend themselves any longer. So as a lieutenant who's fairly fresh, moving your guys through this area, we're having to fight for every foot, and you're just going to be watching your guys get hit. Right? You're going to kick open a door, you're going to move in, you're going to take cover, you're going to kind of catch your breath, and then you're going to have to push back out into the street. As soon as you go back out in the street, the areas are going to get lit up by machine gun fire or by rifle fire. Our guys are going to be pounding back. You have that risk of friendly fire, too, as you're popping in and out of buildings. If you kick in a door and you go upstairs and you're clearing the door and you stick your head out the window, a friendly troop might see you and might cut you off.
God,
So
what
it's
a terrible way to fight.
Just pure chaos. Street fighting is probably as bad as you're going to get. Some of the guys that had fought in the 15th Infantry Regiment through the war said this was the hardest fighting that they had the whole time in the whole campaign.
This area?
Correct. From even counting North Africa, Sicily, Italy, France, all the way up. They said this particular attack was the hardest fighting they had been in. Just because it was so difficult.
Probably slow too, huh?
It is slow, and it's like I said, it's exhausting. That's one of those things that you watch a movie and you're like, oh, I could do that. I'd run over and I'd do that, but go next time you go on a run, if you go on a run up to every driveway, imagine yourself kicking the door, moving in, getting in a life-threatening fight, then run back out, then go to the next one and go. It's like running Alabamas or something. And that adrenaline, and then the adrenaline dumps, it's just going to be very, very hard.
Yeah.
So these guys, your instinct is to not push forward. Your instinct's going to want to just be to hug a wall, or, hey, we took this building, just stay down. And that's going to be one of these challenges Whiteley faces. As a lieutenant and as an older guy, he's in his 30s now, he knows he has to show courage because these guys are looking to him, right? And he knows that he has to lead from the front. And one of the things that they teach you as a leader is never ask your guys to do anything you wouldn't do yourself. So instead of telling his guys, hey, you guys go ahead and get that building, he's doing it first. So he starts moving through the streets, and they get engaged by the Germans. They're getting engaged immediately from the high ground, right? So as Whiteley's moving through the street, he alone charges into an occupied house, right? He leaves his guys behind and he charges into the occupied house. As he's running, he's hit by enemy shrapnel. He's hit in the left arm and the shoulder. He's hit bad, but instead of stopping, because he knows his guys are looking for him, he presses the threat, which basically, we've talked about this before. If you're the enemy and the Americans are charging you and you can pin them down and slow their initiative, you can pick them apart. But if you put fire on them and they just keep coming and close that distance with you, you better kill them fast or they're going to get you.
And then the panic sets in.
Exactly.
Oh, God, they're getting closer.
And that's exactly what
Gotta
Whiteley
reload.
does. As he's running and as he's getting shot at, he's going to get hit huge. Boom. He's going to get hit by shrapnel from a mortar round, which, again, that concussion of that's going to be huge. His left arm's wounded and his shoulder's wounded, but he's going to press that threat and he's going to kick down the door. As soon as he gets inside, he takes his Thompson submachine gun, his Tommy gun, and he kills the two Germans, right? So now he's bleeding and he's in severe pain, but he comes back out and he yells for his guys, follow me. As he's doing so, his arm's getting weaker and weaker. but he's still got a little bit of adrenaline. So to get his guys to follow him, he single-handedly charges into the next house, right? He kicks the door, and now his arm's getting weaker. So he throws in grenades, he fires, and he kills the 2 Germans inside, and he captures 11, right?
Damn.
So imagine these guys on the street as they're watching their lieutenant. They're scared to move, and they've just seen him clear one house of 2 guys, come out bleeding severely. He goes into the next one. He comes out bleeding severely, and now he's got 11 prisoners in tow that he's beckoning forward with his Tommy gun. So by now, the guys realize, hey, it's probably going to be safer to get with this guy. So instead of following back, they get up close. And now they're going to start this house-to-house fighting. And just like we talked about, that literally means every door you come to, you're kicking that door. If you have the grenades, you're going to be throwing those grenades inside, and then you're going to wait for that explosion, and you're going to push in. The Germans inside, if they're smart and they're pushed back, they're going to wait for the grenade to clear, and then they're going to open up on you as well. So every single house you go into is going to be terrifying. And every single house they go into, Whiteley's in front. Whiteley's kicking that door, and by now his arm's getting weaker and weaker and weaker. Because every time they go through, he's already got that debilitating wound, and he's getting more and more exhausted, right? Just
adrenaline's wearing off.
The adrenaline's wearing off. He's losing more blood. His injury's really bad. So by now his arm's completely useless. His left arm is hanging down at the side. So all he's got is one arm, but that's all he needs to fire his Tommy gun. So he keeps going.
Yeah.
The guys are telling him, hey, you need to get back to medical attention. And the medics are trying to get up to him because if your arm is dangling down useless, that means that you're critical at this point, right? Not only may you not be combat effective, but you could die. But Whiteley's a leader, and he refuses to lead his men. With his one arm, he pushes forward again, and they're taking fire from a German position. Because of the angle, they can't take that door. And there's so many guys inside, they know that if they go at it frontally, they're going to die. So with his one arm, he gets a hold of a bazooka, and he takes the bazooka, and he fires through the wall. He blows a hole through the wall, and then he directly charges into the hail of gunfire. So as the Germans are firing him, he has to take his submachine gun and tuck it up under his good arm because he can't hold it properly. He runs through the hole he created into the house, and then he pulls the Thompson submachine gun out, and he starts firing. Once he's inside with his Thompson submachine gun, he kills 5 German soldiers single-handedly, and he captures another 12. So by this point, he's single-handedly killed 9 people, and he's captured 12 in this instance and 11 in the other.
Wow.
By now, he comes back out, and again, these streets are just chaos. There's mortars going off. There's Panzerfaust going off. There's American and German machine gun fire going both ways. There's rifles fire going off. There's going to just be chaos. You're trying to send runners to link back up with other sides of the, other elements that are on other streets. But if they get killed, we don't know what's going off. These buildings are going to be shaking. When you go in a building and it gets hit, it's going to be shaking.
Yeah.
I remember when I was in Iraq, one of our first combat operations, I was a machine gunner, so they sent me in a building, and it was this big palace, and it had this stairwell with no railing, and I had my machine gun strapped around my neck and my ammo, and I was running up the stairs, and I remember I got set into position, and then we started taking fire in the house, and the same building I was in had enemy in it further down. So our Bradley started pounding the building I was in, and I remember the building shaking and thinking, holy God, I'm so glad I'm not on that. And I was running back down the stairs, and just the whole building was shaking, and it was terrifying. You know? And that's one vehicle in one instance with very limited combat compared to these guys where buildings are getting obliterated, right? These big tanks are just firing without mercy. There's no... If someone's inside, fuck it, collapse the building on them, you know? So they are just pounding these buildings with artillery. The noise is just going to be deafening, and that's what these guys are doing. Meanwhile...
And this isn't shit that's built nowadays.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
These are, God knows how old some of these were, because these weren't 1940s buildings. Some of these were, 1880s buildings the guys were still living in, and even earlier, these big brick and mortar buildings and, the stones and everything like that. By now, Whiteley's arm is completely useless again. He's tired, he's exhausted. And as I like to point out on these, when you're wounded that bad, you don't know how bad you're wounded. So it's easy to think, we know that person survived, we know they ended up being okay, but we don't know that at the time.
Yeah.
So you have to think, there's a good chance
he could be thinking
dying.
he's mortally wounded.
Right. He could be thinking he's mortally wounded, and he may be. But despite the danger and despite his wounds, Whiteley chooses to charge again because they have to keep this initiative and they have to keep going. So he yells at his guys to follow him. Yeah, and he charges forward. As he does, another shell lands close to him. An artillery shell lands, and it sends explosion up in the air. And a piece of shrapnel hits him right in the face, and it lodges right in his eye. So you imagine the agony in the chair. If you get,
just anything,
something in your eye, but he actually has a hot piece of metal shears into his face, and it lodges in his eye. So imagine the intense pain that you would have. And he's screaming because he's in pain, but he just clamps his eye as hard shut as he can, and he keeps fighting. So
Damn.
now he has one eye completely useless, and one arm completely useless, and he's lost his eyeball. But instead of panicking, he remains calm. He clamps his eye shut, and he keeps going. He starts yelling for his guys to follow him. He doesn't yell, "Help me." He doesn't yell, "I'm hit in the face." He yells, "Follow me." So they're looking at this guy. His arm's dangling. He's got his Thompson submachine gun. There's blood streaming down his face. But again, he's pressing forward. And again, he charges into another building, and he's firing that Thompson submachine gun. Whiteley kept fighting until the medics physically restrained him and pulled him off of the battlefield.
Damn.
And then by then, he had captured again 23 German soldiers, and he had killed 9 German soldiers single-handedly. In addition to that, his leadership allowed his guys to move forward, and they were able to break the resistance in
Which
this
inspired
area.
probably the rest of the battle.
Exactly, and that's that initiative. Again, the Germans start going to feel like they're defeating and start getting defeated and start falling back. Whiteley's injuries were so bad, they had to take him to an aid station. Thought he was going to die, essentially, because he had that injury to the face. Fortunately, he did survive, and he was sent to hospitals in France where they had to treat him, and he lost his eye. Naturally.
Yeah.
There was no saving his eye when he literally had shrapnel lodged in his eye. Eventually, he was transferred to hospitals in South Carolina, and then in California. He had to have plastic surgery to reconstruct his face. He had to give.
Oh, so this was no joke of an injury.
Oh, no. He had to get an artificial eye, plastic surgery to reconstruct his face. He had to get, his arm back rehabbed and everything like that, because he had shrapnel can be the size of, a BB to the size of your water bottle there potentially. And these are big chunks of metal that are hot, searing, flying, fast, going through the air. And he took them, and he just kept fighting. The fact he was on his feet and moving forward might make you think they weren't as bad as they were, but any one of those injuries would have been completely debilitating.
Yeah.
Right? But he just kept fighting. So eventually, on August 23rd, 1945, he received the Medal of Honor from President Truman, like a lot of these guys. It would have been one of these big ceremonies. So it'd be interesting to see who was at whose ceremonies, which ones we've done and everything.
Yeah.
But
because they all come back, right?
Exactly.
During the ceremonies?
Yeah. So his mom and his brother were able to be there, and he was promoted to captain at the time. After that, he was sent back to the hospital, and it took him 18 months to recover from his wounds. To kind of to add to your question on how bad it was, 18 months recovery to include getting the false eye, to include getting the facial reconstruction, and to include the rehab and the recovery on his arm and his shoulder.
Damn, dude.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
In May of 1946, he was discharged from the army, and when he was sent home, he was basically treated as a war hero. So he got to enjoy that a little bit. He went back to North Carolina, and he ended up getting his master's degree in 1949.
He finished it up?
He continued his education that he had started prior to Pearl Harbor.
That's a tenacious dude.
Exactly. Just a lot of drive,
Yeah.
No quitting him, and he's older by now, but instead of, giving up and resting on your laurels, he continued with his education. The same year he got his master's degree, he got married to Anna, a woman who he stayed with the rest of his life, and they had 2 sons and 3 daughters. He went back to Texas A&M, and he taught agriculture and agronomy there. So
no way.
Back to kind of his alma mater where he started.
Yeah.
Where actually he couldn't get into because his grades weren't good enough initially, but he persevered through that. And he ended up doing 30 years as a teacher. So he continued to stay in that education system and give back. So
that's awesome, man.
You can imagine being at Texas A&M and your agriculture professor with one eye,
He's
wondering what he did.
recipient.
And then, he's the guy that was killing Germans with a Thompson submachine gun while charging through those
That's crazy.
He also he ended up earning his doctorate in soil physics in 1959. So he's just very, very studious in his education. He researched plants and soil management. He dealt with a lot of almost plants as food and kind of that on the cusp of that revolution that we had later on and everything. And he ended up retiring in 1979. From teaching and everything like that. So he lived a good long life. He stayed active in the military community like a lot of these guys did.
Yeah.
He was the post commander for the American Legion, and he was actually the president of the Medal of Honor Society, which is, where all the Medal of Honor recipients, when they're together, he was the president of all of them. So,
of course.
So he's the leader of all these warriors that we talked about, right? Probably because of his education and something. They all do.
He seemed like a regimented guy for sure, dude.
Yeah.
Probably a good organizer.
And again, I don't think he would have been that much of a badass just to look at him, though. He's more of a studious professor type, but he's got that education, he's got that command presence like we talked about earlier. So he's going to be able to take charge. He seems like someone that
follows through on what he's planning to do.
Any situation he's in, he's going to jump up to the front, and he's going to finish. Be responsible.
That's crazy, man. That's really cool.
So a long, distinguished career. One of his sons ended up going to Texas A&M like he had, which is kind of a cool. And then on December 2nd, 1986, he ended up dying of a heart attack.
Yeah.
And he was buried with full military honors. They actually put his body and stayed in Texas A&M. It was, the flag draped coffin stayed there and resting to pay him honors until they buried him. So kind of showing how important he was to the school and how important the school was to him.
That's cool, man. That's school that rejected him.
Yeah, kind of. That's
kind of cool,
right? Which it wasn't a rejection in the sense of like you're not good enough. It was just, hey, you're not up to standard here. I guess come back and instead of saying,
boy, did he come back?
Exactly. Instead of saying, you know what, man, I'm a little bit older. It's the Great Depression right now. I got other things.
Get to work.
He kept his eyes on the prize and he ended up accomplishing that.
That's awesome. Man.
So I have a citation here. Yeah, I often forget these, but I like to try to do them. Yeah. So this is going to be Whiteley's citation. And again, I could be pronouncing his name wrong for all I know. It could be Whitley, but I'm sticking with Whiteley. Yeah. So, all right, here's his official citation. While leading his platoon on December 27th, 1944, in savage house-to-house fighting through the fortress town of Sigolsheim, France, he attacked a building through a street swept by withering mortar and automatic weapon fire. He was hit and severely wounded in the arm and shoulder, but he charged into the house alone and killed its 2 defenders. Hurling smoke and fragmentation grenades before him, he reached the next house and stormed inside, killing 2 and capturing 11 of the enemy. He continued leading his platoon in the extremely dangerous task of clearing hostile troops from Nazi strongpoints along the street until he reached a building held by fanatical Nazi troops. Although suffering from wounds which had rendered his left arm completely useless, he advanced into the strongly defended house and, after blasting a wall with bazooka fire, charged through a hail of bullets. Wedging his submachine gun under his uninjured arm, he rushed into the house through the hole torn by its rockets, killed 5 of the enemy, and forced the remaining 12 to surrender. As he emerged to continue his fearless attack, he was again hit and critically wounded. In agony, with one eye pierced by a shell fragment, he shouted for his men to follow him into the next house. He was determined to stay in the fighting and remained at the head of his platoon until forcibly evacuated. By his disregard for his personal safety, his aggressiveness while suffering from severe wounds, his determined leadership and superb courage, First Lieutenant Whiteley killed 9 Germans, captured 23 more, and spearheaded an attack which cracked the core of the enemy resistance in the vital area.
Man, little stuff like that all happening all over the place.
Exactly.
At that time.
Exactly. And you can imagine just the street fighting, how many guys were all over the place, how much courage was shown by each of them. If you imagine you're in a group of 6 or 7 guys or 10 guys or whatever your squad is. But if it's me, you, and 7 other guys, and we got to go up to that next building, you're going to be, most guys are going to be like, man, I don't want to kick that door.
Yeah, hell no.
It's all good on TV and everything, and it might be good in an overwhelming situation.
I don't want to get shot.
But especially after you've seen 2 or 3 guys kick that door and go through and come back out with explosives, or guys throwing grenades and running in too fast after their own grenade and taking their own shrapnel, and seeing guys grabbing their throats and bleeding and, being carried out on stretchers. And
you're just seeing death everywhere.
You're seeing crumpled buildings with
legs sticking out. A week ago, you saw half your buddies die.
Exactly. There's going to be guys that have already lost their nerve, but you just have to keep going forward.
Yeah.
And this might be your first combat if you're a replacement, so this is going to be the whole world's coming down on you.
Yeah.
Or you might be at the point of exhaustion after 2 years, and like Audie Murphy often said, he's a fugitive from the law of averages. Eventually it's going to catch up with you. So you kind of have to know you're going to die at some point.
Yeah.
And now these Germans, by all accounts, should be giving up, right? We're pressing forward. We have them trapped. Our plan went according to, exactly as we wanted it. We have them on the run, but they're refusing to stop. And every building we go into, they're getting worse. And the deeper we get into town, the more the positions are fortified because they have their fallback.
The more
positions.
dangerous they're becoming. The more desperate. Yeah. Man, what a crazy story.
So what that takes is one guy to lead you, right?
Yeah.
And that's what Whiteley was doing. And there was probably 100 Whiteleys that day, and to a smaller degree moving forward. But, you might have had a lieutenant in one position who moved forward into one and then got killed, and another guy took charge and then he got killed. But Whiteley was able to survive from one building to the next building.
Beat
to
that
the
law
next.
of averages and survive.
Yeah, he beat it, but he paid a dear price for it.
Yeah.
Right? Because think how bad your injury has to be for your arm not to work.
Yeah.
Not like my shoulder.
Whatever the hell happened was bad.
His shoulder is
dead.
It's hanging limp, and then man, like I said, if I
eye thing.
If I got anything in my eye at all, it's. I mean, I've been OC'd, pepper sprayed, and all that kind of stuff, and you just clamp your eye shut, and it's just the worst feeling in the world.
The last thing you're thinking of is offense.
Exactly, trying to move forward, and he's again. You have a facial injury too. You don't know how bad it is. You know, am I going to lose consciousness? Am I going to die? Am I going to be bleeding out here? If I get to the rear, I might have a chance to survive. If I go forward, no one's going to help me. And what's beyond the other side of that building, right? Once you push through that building and you open up with gunfire, what if you get shot again? What if you end up in hand-to-hand combat and now you can't see because you have one eye wounded and you only have one arm?
And then you got to be second-guessing. Am I in a good spot to be leading right now?
Exactly. That's a good point,
Am I leading my guys into a bad situation?
Right. Am I going to cause them harm because I can't take care of them?
Yeah.
Exactly. But if you imagine going through a room, killing somebody, walking up the stairs, and somebody jumps on top of you, and you only have one arm to fight them with.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Think about that. Or trying to huck a grenade. And I don't know how he even fired that bazooka. A bazooka is a two-man weapon, so you put it up on your shoulder. The secondary guy's going to load it from the back. They're going to tap you on the head. They're going to connect the wires, and you're going to put your hand on that trigger, and you're going to fire the trigger. So either somebody loaded it for him, and then he got it up, or he loaded it himself with one arm, and then hoisted it onto his shoulder and then fired it, right? And imagine the Germans inside. They're sweating, they're waiting, they're dying. They've been seeing their friends die, and they're all hunkered down in their fortified positions looking at that front door, waiting for you to come through. And as soon as they're expecting you to run through the front door, the side of the building gets blasted out. And instead of...
While they're collecting themselves.
Exactly. While they're collecting themselves and they're potentially wounded, you have a one-eyed, one-armed guy running through and spraying you with 45 caliber Tommy gun, which I think is a 20-round stick mag, depending, or if you had the drum, because we were talking about earlier, you rush through that breach, you only have so much ammo. So if you put it down, you have to change magazines. Good luck changing magazines with one arm on that sucker.
Yeah,
so whatever you're going in with is
all you got.
It's all you got. And you're just hoping and praying your guys are following you and they're doing their job after that.
Damn. Great story, man. Good stuff. Wow. Yeah, leave us a comment on this, man. Leave us a comment, share with your friends.
Yeah, let us know. Again, like we say every time, if there's any suggestions or recommendations or anybody you guys want to hear, if you guys like World War II, if you guys want to hear more of the Pacific or more Marine or Navy or what have you, let us know. I got a bunch of research done so we can kind of pick and choose what we want to do on there.
And the more you comment and share, the more we get popped into the suggested videos for other videos connected to this kind of topic. So
so leave comments on the YouTube videos, please, if you guys can. So
we'll see you next time.
Rock and roll.
Thanks.